Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chris Haig. I'm the Chief Executive of Meningitis Research Foundation. I'll say a few words a bit later on, but my task at the moment is to say a very big welcome to you all and to introduce our first speaker and sort of host for the event, Dr Hilary Jones. Hilary is a patron of the foundation. I'm sure well known to everyone in this room as GMTV's medical advisor and resident doctor, who in fact was on screen this morning talking about us and meningitis, and that was very helpful, Hilary, thank you. As indeed was your appearance on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire last year, when you produced the single largest cheque for the charity in the whole year. So that was a fantastic support.
All I can say in regards to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire is thank goodness for Andrew McLean, who answered the last question correctly. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for inviting me to speak to you today. It's a great honour and privilege. I've been a patron of the charity for many years now, and it does such fantastic work. I'm delighted to continue to help in any way I can and to be here today. This, of course, is the 20th anniversary of the foundation, and we want to launch the brand new website, which we worked on so hard, and I know some of the designers are here today. And more specifically, the Book of Experience, which marks the fantastic contribution that so many patients have made to the organisation and keeps the motivation going for all of us who work within the foundation. I don't have to tell you that meningitis and septicaemia remain an ever-present and unpredictable threat. It remains a cruel and unforgiving infectious disease. It's a brutal and swift killer of children and adults alike. It's probably the infectious disease that parents fear the most, probably with very good reason. Yeah, just for a moment, let's think of the fantastic progress we've made over the last 20 years, largely thanks to the superb work of everybody within the organisation. During this time, hundreds of lives have been saved, in particular by the tumbler test and awareness of symptoms. Just today, as Chris said, on GMTV, we had a 3-year-old boy called Declan, who initially was diagnosed as having a virus. Just a virus, take him home, don't worry, he'll be fine. And actually it was the Foundation's TV advert about the tumbler test and the symptoms that alerted the mother and the sister and her sister to the fact that Declan was much more ill than an ordinary virus or common cold could possibly account for, and admitting him to hospital because they were more assertive, because they saw these symptoms on the TV advert, undoubtedly contributed to saving Declan's life. So that was a really nice piece of TV to be involved in this morning. And straight after that programme, we had 2 texts, which I have here, from other viewers who said exactly the same thing happened. And that's just 2 out of the viewers watching this morning. So I know the World Foundation does do a real, significant, tangible job in making people aware of the symptoms and saving lives. What have we achieved in the last 20 years? Well, we know the Foundation is the charity that fights death and disability from meningitis and septicaemia. It funds vital scientific research. I understand at the moment there are 22 research projects in the programme, and since it was founded in 1989, there have been 122 research grants awarded altogether, leading to many advances in the prevention, the detection and the treatment of meningitis and septicaemia. The scientific research total value in investment is 14.8 million, no mean feat for a relatively small organisation. Amongst the research that's been carried out, we've helped to identify the early red flag symptoms of meningitis and septicaemia. Not very long ago, we were still talking about high fever, stiff neck, photophobia, dislike of bright lights. But we, through the Foundation's work, have managed to make people aware that the red flag symptoms that occur earlier, 5 hours earlier, are the pale, blotchy rash, the cold hands and feet, and the pains in the joints and the muscles. And if people can spot those symptoms, particularly in the very young, we have a 5-hour window whereby we're more likely to save lives by giving treatment early. And that work was largely down to the work of the Foundation. We looked at the vaccines that have been used elsewhere in the world, in Cuba and in New Zealand and Norway, and discovered that actually these vaccines would not be useful in the UK. It was important to know that, and instead the research has been directed much more appropriately towards finding a vaccine for meningitis type B that will work in the UK. We've also looked at Group B streptococcal GBS infection, a leading cause of meningitis in newborn babies, affecting about 500 babies every year in the UK. And we've now got prenatal guidance as a result of that, and babies will undoubtedly be saved. Worldwide, the foundation is going to be spreading its wings, I hear. Pneumococcal disease kills about 1.6 million people worldwide, 1 million of whom are young children and infants. And the research project in Boston, which we might be hearing more about, has resulted in the development of a new low-cost vaccine for that. Campaign achievements, well, there was the Meningitis Baby Watch, which Victoria Beckham and I helped to launch in 1999, and that won several awards. There have been other awards and commendations from the Royal College of General Practitioners, which said that the campaign to identify the septicemic rash with the tumbler test is credited with helping to save, in the first year alone, 15 lives. So the work has been truly significant, and I think needs to be, we can be truly proud of the achievements of the Foundation. On a personal basis, I've been touched by meningitis as a GP over the years. I think I've been in practice now, dare I say it, for 30 years. And I've just seen 2 cases. We're talking about a relatively rare condition. But those 2 cases, strangely, sort of jumped out of the room at me. I was asked to go and visit. The first case was a teenage boy who had always been fit and well, and had been playing football that afternoon and had developed a fever during the course of the early evening. And by the time I got, the parents said, "I don't really want you to come out and see my son, doctor, I just want your advice." But what the father said to me rang some alarm bells, and I went to do the house call, and I took one look at this teenage boy and thought, he is very, very ill indeed. And it's an instinctive thing, to some extent. The same thing happened with the other child who was younger, playing in the playground a couple of hours before and desperately ill a few hours later. And I think parents can often use those instincts and see something is desperately wrong with their child, whereas sometimes doctors can't, and some parents can't either. So it is an unpredictable thing, but people can be trained to recognise the symptoms at an early stage, and we need to do far more work in training young doctors to recognise the early symptoms. Still, I get letters from people at GMTV saying, "My child was very ill, I was told it was just a virus, to go away and give paracetamol, everything will be fine." And 30 years ago, when I used to do house calls, we would say, "If you're not happy, if things aren't better, call me in 2 hours, or I will come and visit after the surgery and make sure your child's better." These days, there's not that continuity of care. There'll be a different doctor on duty a few hours later. And all the time, children are falling through the net, and adults falling through the net, because they're pushed from pillar to post, that hospital, this clinic, that doctor, and there's not the continuity in communication, which is something we do need to address, and is already being addressed. But the wonderful work Foundation's doing, giving protocols, making junior doctors aware of the protocol that needs to be done. Still need to do a lot of work on that, but we're getting there. Recent figures show that the battle is far from won. I've got figures here from the Health Protection Agency from December and early January. 252 confirmed cases of Group B meningococcal infection, that's the one we don't have a vaccine for yet, compared to 191 cases in the same period last year, and 142 the year before that. So there's an increase in meningococcal type B infection. That's why this illness still needs to be feared and still needs to be campaigned for, so that we can do more about it. It would be a great dream, wouldn't it, if in another 20 years we've done enough work to eradicate this disease entirely. Unfortunately, that will never happen, will never be redundant, because there will always be microbes ready to invade our central nervous system and our bloodstream and cause these horrific diseases. But there's no reason why in the next 20 years we can't go a hell of a long way to making things a great deal better than they are now, and reducing the burden of disability and death in the future. We've got some great speakers to hear now. We've got next Professor George Griffin, former chair of the Scientific Advisory Panel, now trustee of the Foundation. Norman Pace, a patron and a parent with personal experience of the disease. We've then got Ian Benningfield, Deputy Head of Development for the Foundation, and then Chris Head again, who will launch us into his speech before we have some lunch. So thank you for listening to me, and let me introduce Professor, I've got it here, I should be more prepared, shouldn't I? Professor, come up and introduce yourself. George Griffin.